The Enneagram. The law of octaves has been touched upon previously, the fact that every process, no matter upon what scale it takes place, is determined in its gradual development by the law of the structure of the seven-tone scale. In this regard, it has been pointed out that every note, every tone, if taken on another scale, is again a whole octave. The intervals between mi and fa, and between ti and do, that cannot be filled by the intensity of the energy of the process in operation, which require an additional shock, or outside help, connect by this very fact one process with another. From this it follows that the law of octaves connects all processes of the universe, and to one who knows the scales of the passage, the laws of the structure of octaves, it presents the possibility of an exact cognition of everything, and of every phenomenon in its essential nature. Of the interrelations with phenomena and the things connected with them. For uniting into one whole all knowledge connected with the law of the structure of an octave, there is a symbol that takes the form of a circle divided into 9 parts, with lines connecting the 9 points on the circumference in a particular order. Before moving to the study of this symbol, however, it is important to note certain aspects of the teaching that make use of the illustration, as well as the relation of the teaching to other systems that make use of symbolism for the transmission of knowledge. In order to understand the interrelation of these systems, it must be remembered that the ways that lead to the cognition of unity approach it like the radii of a circle, moving toward its center. The closer they come to the center, the closer they approach one another. As a result, the theoretical statements that form the basis of one line can sometimes be explained from the point of view or statements of another line, and vice versa. For this reason, it is sometimes possible to form an intermediate link between two adjacent lines of teaching. However, in the absence of a complete knowledge and understanding of the fundamental lines, such intermediary ways may lead to a mixing of the lines, to confusion or even error. Of the principal lines that are more or less known, 4 can be named: the Hebraic, the Egyptian, the Persian, the Hindu. Furthermore, of the last we know only its philosophy, and of the first 3 parts or bits of their theory. In addition to these 4, there are 2 lines known in Europe or the West, namely Theosophy and modern occultism, which have been drawn from a mixture of the fundamental lines. Both lines bear within themselves grains of truth, but neither of them possesses full knowledge, in or of itself. Therefore, attempts to bring them to practical realization yield only negative results. The teaching whose theory is here explained is complete, self-supporting and independent of other lines. It has remained obscure up until the present age, and like other systems, makes use of symbolism for its transmission. One of the principal illustrations used in teaching is the figure of a circle, divided into 9 parts, or the Enneagram. The circle is divided into 9 equal segments. 6 points are connected by a figure that is symmetrical in relation to a diameter, passing through the uppermost point of the division of the circumference. Furthermore, the uppermost point of the divisions is an equilateral triangle, linking together the points of the divisions that do not enter into the construction of the original figure. This symbol cannot be met with anywhere in the study of occultism, either in books or through oral transmission. It was given significance by those that knew, and considered it necessary to keep its knowledge secret. Only vague hints and partial representations can be met with in literature. In the book, Study on the Origins and Nature of the Zohar, by S. Carr, published in Paris during 1901, see pages 200 and 201, there is a drawing of a circle divided into 9 parts with the following description. If we multiply 9 by 9, the product is shown in the number 8 on the left side, and the number 1 on the right side. In the same manner, 9 by 8 gives the product shown as number 7 on the left side, and in the number 2 on the right. Exactly in the same way too, with the product of 9 by 6. Beginning with 9 by 5, the order becomes reversed, namely, the number representing the units takes the left side, and the number representing the tens takes the right. It is also possible to encounter the representation and another illustration, with one more shared herein. The symbol, that takes the form of a circle divided into 9 parts, with lines connecting them together, expresses the law of 7 in its union with the law of 3. The octave, as we know, possesses 7 tones, with the 8th a repetition of the first. Then, together with the 2 additional shocks that fill the intervals mi, fa, and ti, do, there are 9 elements. The complete construction of the symbol, that connects it with a complete expression of the law of octaves, is more complex than the construction illustrated. However, even this is able to illustrate the inner laws of one octave, and points to a method of cognizing the essential nature of a thing examined in itself. The isolated existence of a thing, or phenomenon under examination, within the closed cycle of an eternally returning, and uninterruptedly flowing process. The circle symbolizes this process. The separate points in the division of the circumference, symbolize the various steps of the process. The symbol as a whole is do, namely something with an orderly and complete existence. Not only a circle, but a completed cycle, and contains within itself everything necessary for its own existence. It is isolated from its surroundings, and the progression of the stages in the process connect the succession of the numbers 1 through 9. The presence of the ninth step, filling up the interval t, do, completes the cycle, that is, it closes the circle, which begins anew at that point. The apex of the triangle closes the duality of its base, making possible the many forms of its manifestation, in the most diverse triangles. In the same way, the point of the apex of the triangle multiplies itself infinitely, in the line of its base. Every beginning and completion of the cycle is therefore situated in the apex of the triangle, at the point where the beginning and the end merge, where the circle is closed, and which sounds in the endlessly flowing circle as the two do's of the octave. It is the ninth step that closes, and then once again reopens the cycle. Therefore, in the upper point of the triangle corresponding to do, stands the number 9, and among the remaining points are disposed the numbers 1 through 8. Passing on to the examination of the complex figure within the circle, we note the rules of its construction. The laws of unity are reflected in all phenomena. The decimal system is constructed upon the basis of these same laws. Taking a unit as one note, containing within itself a whole octave, we divide this unit into 7 unequal parts, in order to arrive at the 7 different or unequal notes of the octave. In the illustration represented, however, the inequality of these parts is not taken into account, and for the construction of the diagram there is first taken a 7th part, then 2/7, then 3/7, 4/7, 5/7, 6/7, and 7/7. Hence, calculating these parts as decimals, we obtain the outcomes given. In examining the series of periodic decimals arrived at in this manner, we see that all except for the last period consist of exactly the same 6 digits, that run in a definite sequence. So that knowing the first digit of the period, it is possible to reconstruct the whole period in full. If we now place on the circumference of the circle all 9 numbers from 1 to 9, and connect those numbers that are included in the period by straight lines, in the same sequence in which the numbers stand in the period, according to which number we start from, we arrive at the figure found inside the circle. Notice, however, that the numbers 3, 6 and 9 are not included in the period. They form a separate triangle, representing the free trinity of the symbol. Making use of theosophical addition then, and taking the sum of the numbers of the period, we always obtain 9. That is, a whole octave. For example, 1/7 or 0.142857. 1 plus 4 equals 5 plus 2 equals 7 plus 8 equals 15 equals 1 plus 5 equals 6 plus 5 equals 11 equals 1 plus 1 equals 2 plus 7 equals 9. Again, in each separate note there will be included a whole octave, subject to the same laws as the first. The positions of the notes will correspond to the numbers of the period, and the illustration of an octave would appear as shown. The triangle 9, 3, 6, that unites into one whole the 3 points on the circumference, not included in the period, connect together the law of 7 and the law of 3. The numbers 3, 6, 9, are not included in the period. Then finally 2 of them, 3 and 6, correspond to the 2 intervals in the octave. The third is, so to speak, superfluous, but at the same time it replaces the fundamental note that does not enter the period. Furthermore, any phenomenon that is able to act reciprocally, with a phenomenon similar to it, resonates as the note do in a corresponding octave. Therefore do can emerge from its circle, and enter into orderly correlation with another circle, that is to play the role in another cycle, that in the cycle under consideration, is played by the shocks filling the intervals in that octave. Here therefore, by possessing this possibility, potentiality of the 6th dimension, do is connected by the triangle 3, 6, 9, with those places in the octave where the shocks from external sources occur. Where the octave can be penetrated to connect with what exists outside of it, the spiral forming. The law of 3 stands out, so to speak, from the law of 7, the triangle penetrates through the period, and these 2 figures in combination, give the inner structure of the octave and of its notes. At this point in reasoning, however, it would be entirely correct to raise the question, why is one of the intervals, that is designated by the number 3, found in its right place, between the notes mi and fa, but the other interval, which is designated by the number 6, is found between so and la? When its rightful place is actually between t and do. If the condition were to be shown so as to illustrate the appearance of the second interval, 6 in its own place, we would obtain the circle illustrated. The 9 elements of the closed cycle are grouped symmetrically together, in the manner shown. The distribution obtained from the octave, however, is logically constructed, which gives the grouping shared. The one situation places x between mi and fa, and the other between so and la, where it is not necessary. This apparent placement of the interval in the wrong place itself shows to those able to interpret the symbol what kind of shock is required for the passage of T into Do. In order to understand this, it is necessary to recollect what was said about the role of shocks in the processes proceeding, both in man and in the universe. When we examine the application of the law of octaves in relation to the cosmos, then the step Sun, Earth is represented in the manner shown. With regard to the 3 octaves of radiation, it was pointed out that the passage of Do to T, the filling of the interval, takes place within the organism of the Sun. It was pointed out in the cosmic octave with regard to the interval Do, T, that this passage is accomplished by the will of the Absolute. The passage Fa, Mi, however, is accomplished mechanically, with the help of a special machine that makes it possible for Fa, which enters into it, to acquire through a series of inner processes, the characteristics of So, standing above it, without changing its note or resonance. That is to say, it accumulates, as it were, sufficient inner energy to enable it to pass into the next note. Exactly the same relationship is repeated in all completed processes. When examining the processes of nutrition in the human body, for example, and the transformation of substances taken into the organism, we find in these processes precisely the same intervals and shocks. As pointed out previously, man takes in 3 kinds of food or sustenance, each one of them representing the beginning of a new octave. The second octave, that is the air octave, joins up with the first octave, food and drink, at the point where the first octave comes to a halt in its development, or at the note, Mi. Just as in many chemical processes, only definite quantities of substances, exactly determined by nature, can give compounds or mixtures of the required quality. Therefore too in the human body, the 3 kinds of food or sustenance need to be blended in definite proportions. The resultant compound in the process of the food octave is the substance T or hydrogen-12 in the 3rd scale, that needs an additional shock in order to pass into a new Do. Furthermore, as 3 octaves have played a role in the production of this compound, their influence must also be reflected in the final result, by determining its quality. The quality and quantity of the resultant compound are adjusted, simply by regulating the 3 kinds of food received in the body. Only in the process of a full and harmonious conformity, between all 3 kinds of food, by the strengthening or weakening of the different parts or proportions of the process, can the required result be obtained. It is essential to remember too that no arbitrary attempt to regulate food, in the literal sense of the word, or breathing for that matter, can lead to the desired end, unless one knows exactly what they are doing and why, then knowing precisely what kind of result these adjustments will obtain. Finally, even if a person were to succeed in regulating components of the process successfully, say food and breathing, once again this would not be sufficient, because it is even more important to know how to regulate the sustenance of the 3rd level, which is impressions. Before considering the practical influence of inner processes of your body, it is essential to understand the mutual relationship between the substances entering the organism, the nature of the possible shocks required, and the laws governing the transition of notes. These laws are everywhere the same, as above, so below. In studying man, we study the cosmos, in studying the cosmos, we study man.